do we know when zeal is righteous and when it is misguided? Hi, this is Barry Phelps with 10-Minute Torah, day number 3, the Torah portion, Pinchas. We've been reading about how the Pinchas rose up in the zeal of Yah, put to death those that were improperly relating in their tent, or even some would say before the tent of the tabernacle. And a plague that had broke out in Israel was stopped. Today, let's go over to the book of Yochanan, John chapter number 2, and begin reading with verse number 13. And the Pesach of the Yehudim, Passover of the Jews, was near, and Yeshua went up to Jerusalem, and he found in the set-apart place those selling oxen and sheep and doves, and the money changers sitting, and having made a whip of cords, he drove them all out of the set-apart place with the sheep and the oxen, and poured out the money changers' coins and overturned the tables. And he said to those selling doves, "Take these away. Do not make the house of my Father a house of merchandise." And his taught ones remember that it was written, "The order for your house has eaten me up." And that's a quote from the book of Psalms, chapter 69 and verse 9. So Yeshua, like Pinchas, rose up in the zeal of Yah, and like Pinchas, probably was criticized. There were those who would say to Yeshua, "Who gave you authority to do this?" How do you know when zeal is righteous, and how you know when it is unrighteous or destructive or misguided? There are a lot of those perhaps that would say, well, I'm acting under the anointing, or the Spirit of Yah has laid this upon my heart. When zeal is acted out, in order for it to be of Yah and to be righteous, it needs to be redemptive, righteously corrective. The zeal and the passion is not about the individual's perspective or position on some matter, but rather that they are defending the integrity of the Most High. The issue then becomes about Yah, not about them, and not about their deal. When it is confusing, when it is about themselves, when it is destructive, it's misguided. Now, one might say, well, what could be more destructive than taking someone's life? Pinchas rose up with the spear and put someone to death. Let's back up just a little bit. Yah had already given the command to Moshe, hang up those leaders that are participating in this improper relation situation that is taking place in the camp. And a plague had already started to take their lives. Hang them up before me so that my wrath be turned away from Israel. In other words, the plague was going to take some lives, had taken some lives, and was going to take more because of this great sin. Here's the problem. Sin does not stay in someone's individual camp. It spreads like cancer. It moves powerfully through a body. You let one person start mumbling and grumbling, griping and complaining, and they're going to eventually start spouting that off to someone else, and it's going to get infectious, and people are going to adopt their offenses and their issues, and it's going to get problematic. It has to be, as Barney Fife said on the Andy Griffith Show, nip it in the bud. I'm a big fan of bud nipping. So you have to put a stop to this kind of stuff, or it will become destructive. Ask Korach. Now we're in the case where it's not words, but it's deeds. Pinchas realized that something had to be done. And when the most blatant case to that point, perhaps, was now right in front of his eyes, he said, enough is enough, and he took care of it. The goal, though, was not to defend Pinchas and his sensibilities or his perspective, but the integrity of the camp, the integrity of Moshe's leadership, and the integrity, the honor of Yah's name. So when Yeshua walked into the Temple Mount area and he saw that merchandising was being done. Now, according to the Torah, if I were to travel to Jerusalem, it would be improper or enabling, it would be a problem for me to carry my animal, my best animal, to the Jerusalem area and offer it. Therefore, I would sell my best animal, take that money, go to Jerusalem, and there I would purchase the best animal that I could and present that as my offering. That is permissible in the Torah. The problem was that in that day, the money changers, they would take the coinage in my hand that it may have been Israeli coinage, it could have been a foreign coinage. But the issue was you had to purchase the animals with temple coinage. So you had to exchange the money at which they were making a grand profit. It was extortion. It was greed. It was manipulation. And the people were being grossly taken advantage of. And Yeshua was outraged at that, let alone the amount of animals that would have been there in that area, turning a set-apart place into a common place. It's not that the animals shouldn't be for sale. They needed to be. It's not that they shouldn't be in close proximity to the altar area. They needed to be conveniently enough close to move the animals to the altar. But to bring them into that close environment was to take the set-apart environment and treat it as common. Yeshua was outraged at this, and rightly so. The integrity was not just about Yeshua and his hurt feelings. He was rightly upset, but his movement was for the people and for his Father, and he cleaned house. There has to be a willingness on our part to clean house, to deal with the stuff. Zeal needs to motivate us. Listen carefully. It needs to motivate us to where we are indignant and reactive, responsive to those things that are defaming of our Father's name. Now, looking over into somebody else's house and their courtyard and then their deeds and doings and going off on them is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about in your house, in your life. Look in the mirror and be blatantly honest with yourself and call yourself to task. There's nothing wrong with this. You may, someone else seeing you do it may think you're crazy, but I know better. There's nothing wrong with taking a hard, serious, honest look at yourself and calling yourself to task about the things that you know you're letting slide. You know that they're not honorable to Yah. Could be that you're blurring the line between the set apart and the common. Yah says, my house needs to be a house of prayer. That part of you that has been given to prayer, to worship, to study, to focus on Him, you got to stay true to that. I'm talking to myself here. We have to do these things, and we need to do it with some passion, some energy, and some zeal. Why? Because it's going to produce a righteous result. Being misguided would be where we beat ourselves up over it. Don't beat yourself up. Encourage yourself. Correct yourself. Discipline yourself. And go easy on your neighbor. And we'll see you again tomorrow. Until then, shalom.